You don't need more leads. That's one of the truths to getting to the next level that Kevin Kauffman shares on this episode of the Loan Officer Mastermind, brought to you by Win by Noon. And Kevin is a leader, entrepreneur, investor, all around nice guy. He's got a 3,000 person downline at EXP or just shy of that. He has a real estate team in Phoenix, Arizona that does 100, 200 transactions a year. And he really has an impactful conversation with us this week. And I know if you're looking to grow your real estate business, or if you're a loan officer looking to help your real estate agents, this is a don't miss episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Loan Officer Mastermind powered by Win by Noon. I am Todd Bookspan, and I am super excited to be here today. But before I bring on our guest, I've got to bring on my co-host. Let's start with none other than the co-founder of this Friday Mastermind, Mr. Dave Savage.
What's up, my brother? And what's up, D Bird? I am super pumped about this guest. It's been too long since we've had Mr. Kevin Kauffman on this show. I'll let you do a proper introduction, but I would just tell all the mortgage professionals, this would be a good conversation to invite your realtors to. I'm not going to steal Todd's thunder, but we truly have one of the most innovative, visionary, very clear on what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do, leaders in the real estate space. And he is winning in both work and life. Deborah Byrd, what do you want to say before we get it rocking?
Just to remind you guys to participate in the chat. This is a mastermind, and it's not every week that we have someone from the real estate side of things. So show up, be bold, be courageous, ask your questions, and play all in.
There we go. I love that. So for those of you who are watching or recording this either in YouTube or on one of the podcast platforms, yes, we do go live every Friday. You can sign up by going to winbynoon.com/Friday Mastermind, but we're super glad that you're listening, regardless of whether it's live or after the fact. And Kevin Kauffman, it's great to have Kevin on. Kevin was one of the first folks that when Dave, Deborah, and I were like, let's have some real estate agents, some people who are super knowledgeable outside of the mortgage industry be our guest. Kevin was kind of the first, and really, I put him at the top of the list of our Realtor friends of the show. I met Kevin long ago when he was the part owner of a big global franchise. Kevin was one of the first big team leaders. He led a big real estate team, still does, that went off to EXP and really built a huge downline there with his partner, Fred. And then I've just really seen him become a real estate entrepreneur after that. And last but not least, he's a huge LA Dodgers fan. That is kind of hard for me, and he's really off. He's got an amazing podcast now about baseball cards. So welcome to the show, Kevin. Good to see you again, my friend.
Thanks for having me back, guys. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, I almost didn't know where to start, but let's just sort of start with what we call this, the 5 truths of getting to the next level. You've got a group called Next Level Agents. And I know we settled on real estate entrepreneur. That was Dave's suggestion, but you do a whole lot. So, real quick, just for someone who might not know you, kind of give a little bit of the highlights of all the things that you think might be important to a listener.
Assuming you mean that as far as kind of like my experience, I think first and foremost, I'm a real estate agent. I run a real estate team. My business partner and I have worked together for, over 18 years now. So basically the entire time I've been licensed in real estate. And our team has gone a lot of different ways, but nonetheless, we still run a real estate team, sell, 100, 200 homes a year in the Phoenix area. That is less of our focus today, although there were times where that was like our entire world. As you mentioned, we also joined EXP Realty a number of years ago and have built we call it our community, but you might call it a revenue share group or downline. I think of it as like a brokerage within a brokerage, truthfully, in community of, we're nearing 3,000. We'll hit 3,000 agents this year in our group. And then we've got our hands in a few other things. We invest in real estate. We invest in other businesses as well. As you know, we talk a lot about those things, Todd. Those, as you mentioned, those have been kind of our last handful of conversations have been all about those opportunities. And then run a podcast in real estate called Next Level Agents. And we're in, I guess, a Facebook group as well called Next Level Agents with about 30,000 agents in it. And as you mentioned, a baseball card podcast as well called Cardboard Wars. So
with a guy you might have heard of named Ben Kinney.
Yeah. Although nobody in that world knows who Ben Kinney is. They just
Really?
know. Yeah, he doesn't show his face online. And so he's Ben Ripping there. But
What's it called?
It's called Cardboard Wars.
Okay.
Hey, and Kevin, you also have a pretty prolific book club that you invest time and money in. Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, the book club, and that's a strong word. I always feel funny saying that word because it's truthfully, to put it in terms of like for realtors or for loan officers, it's a way of staying connected with our sphere of influence, our A's, if you will, in our sphere of influence. And so there's a few things behind that, which was number one, I wanted people to feel like they were having an experience of me without me having to be there, right, all the time. We can all only go to so many lunches and so many events and all that stuff. I want to let those people know that they are special to me, even when I can't do it all the time. And it's just a way of continuing to add value to the people in my world, which I selfishly know is going to add value to my business. But it's just the way I like to do it. So what we do is we I read a lot of books. I at least skim a lot of books, and I read quite a few of them. And I always found myself every year giving away one, or like I'd go buy an extra 100 copies and just mail them off. And then I was talking to a mutual friend of mine and Todd's. His name is Michael Burnoff, and Michael was like, "Dude, it's one thing to give someone a book. It's another thing to tell them why that book was so impactful for you." So I started writing notes with my book to say, "Hey, Dave, here's why I think you would like this book. This is the part that stuck out to me." And then Fred and I took it a step further. We took a page out of John Ruhlin's book, rest in peace. If you've ever read the book Giftology, uh, it's really we made it all about the presentation, not just the book. So we buy a book or two or three every year. We don't actually have a set number. It's kind of what speaks to us. And then we go all out on the packaging. We custom design a book. We write a handwritten letter. We get a card written. We send our cards to we don't send them. We take them to a lady here locally, and she's a calligraphy expert. She writes everyone's full name on the envelope. And then in that letter, we invite all of our book club members that we're sending this book to, and there's now about 300 of them, to a private Zoom with the author of that book to discuss it. So it's kind of, I mean, we literally go, it's not the book's, whatever, $10 or $20, but we're spending more than that on literally just the packaging of it because we want to make it memorable. And that's kind of where the book Giftology comes into that process.
So, so I want to put a little color on top of that because I've been honored to be one of those 300 folks, and I save all the packages. I'm always impacted by it. I'm currently writing a book called The Savage Code, and one of my philosophies, one of my code is always be masterminding. Almost all of the things that are positive in my life and the skills and the thought process, they come from masterminding with people. And Kevin is just a master at this. And when you hear the kind of investment he makes in time, in money, to like have this group of 300 people, and I can tell you, every time I get it, I'm grateful. My respect for him grows. Like, wow, man, this guy's still doing this. It's not like he just did it once or twice or three times. He's still passionate about connecting and giving value without asking for anything. And then yesterday I had the honor, Todd, Michael Leland in the Portland market. Are you familiar with Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. And every quarter he puts on I don't know, 60 to 100 person mastermind. I had the honor, myself and Ken Perry were two of the speakers at his thing yesterday. And I was just like, preparing for our meeting, I almost saw this parallel where a leader is creating community, like in Kevin's case. And I know you do in-person masterminds too, so I'm not saying he does it, you don't, but I'm just like, I feel like doing things like the book club, doing things like Michael, where he's creating a community and putting together people in the real world and masterminding, like your leadership, your connection is future proof. And like everybody should be doing some version of that. Any thoughts on that, Kevin?
Oh, I thought you were asking Todd. Yes, my thoughts are I agree wholeheartedly because listen, I love tech like you, Dave, and I'm always wanting to check out all the new stuff. And I'm just a firm believer of this entire business. And in fact, the business of just being alive as a human being all comes down to relationships. And so anything I can do to strengthen relationships is to me something. And using a mastermind and having in-person connections. And really, I think of it as community building. There's so many benefits from it from a business standpoint that is like we don't even have the time today to list them. It's immense.
Let me throw something out there too. One of the things that I love about your mastermind that, the most recent that I've gone to, I think people think of a mastermind and they're thinking of what Dave talked about. You have to have, speakers and all this stuff. You just had a moderator, right? Frank Klesitz got up there and he put up a big post-it note and said, "What do you guys want to talk about today?" And the people all said what they want to talk about. And then literally it was a discussion with the room about those topics. It wasn't anything that was pre-prepared. There was nothing there. And then I've been to one before where it's actually the first time I met and saw Phil Jones speak. And, Phil spoke, but it was the same thing. The rest of the mastermind was about the guests in the room. And so I think as you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, I could never do that." You can, literally, you can. You could do it just with a conference room in your office or in a title company's office with 10 people for an hour where you just say, "What do you guys want to talk about?" And if you would get enough topics from them that you couldn't get it all done in an hour.
That's true. It's funny. I'll share a quick story on that. The first time I had Frank do that, he kept going like, "What are we going to talk about?" And I kept telling him what the game plan was. Like, no, really, we're going to ask people that day, and then we're gonna build our discussion on the fly. And he kind of didn't believe me. Even up to the night before, we went out to dinner. He flew into town, and he's like, "Okay, really, what's the game plan for tomorrow?" And I was like, "Frank, you trust me on this. This is how it goes." Because I had this experience of, listen, masterminds are great. I've gotten so much out of them. But I had this one particular leader in my life who did a lot of great things for me. However, every mastermind was always his agenda. And it just never felt totally congruent. I got a lot out of it. I just didn't feel like I was able to maximize what I could have gotten out of it because of his need to control what was said in the room. And so, me, like I go against the grain. And so I instantly went, "No, we're going to actually do this free flow." So that's the base of it. But here's the other piece of it. I think that's really important. At least that's what's helped me to cheat, if you will, is I plant the room, meaning I handpick who comes in the room. And if I didn't personally pick you to be in the room, it was filtered through somebody I trust. So like if Todd said, "Hey, my buddy Dave wants to come, can I invite him as well?" Yeah, I'm a hard yes on that, even if I don't know Dave at the time, because of how well I know Todd. But here's the thing, throughout that conversation in the day, whether this is an hour long or 8 hour long mastermind, I know Todd's strengths and at least half the room because I've spent time getting to know these people over the years. And so I never have to worry about like a lull in the conversation because I know how to pick people out and go like, "Oh no, this is Dave, you talk about this," or "Todd, I need you to focus in on that," or "Deb, you focus in on this." And so just kind of knowing at least, a good portion of the room will help to keep the flow of that going because there can be dead spots if you're not sure or if you're not comfortable in that sort of format. And so just knowing the people really well is an easy way to do that.
Hey,
So can I say something that some loan officers may be thinking right now? And if they're not a big name like Kevin, or say they're not they haven't hosted an event like this before. I've heard several of them tell me, I don't think anyone's going to show up, or I have trouble getting people to show up. What advice would you give to that loan officer who maybe hasn't, built this up and maybe doesn't have the name yet? How would you start?
Start by building stronger relationships.
Mm.
That's it. Like maybe your next step isn't to host the mastermind. Maybe it's to actually to have the 5 or 6 strong relationships of people that when you go to them, that they're going to help you carry the conversation, right? And they're also going to get a lot out of it because of it. But secondly, the other thing is like it's personal invitations. So I limit these to like 30 to 40 people at a time. And there is no mass invitation. There is no registration link floating around. There's no email. It is all personal one-to-one invitations. And I'm telling them what they can, here's what I do, here's why I think they should come. And that gets the buy-in. And if you don't have enough people to put 10 or 20 people in the room, to me, then that's just an indication of like, okay, I gotta build more strong relationships.
Yeah, I
I
do think that's one of your secret powers, Kevin, is that I feel like any room I've been in with you, whether it was in a room of entrepreneurs, a room of realtors, a room of whomever, is you're always one to say, how can I add value? I can remember at Genius Network, you meeting with the top financial advisor in the group to help him, coach him through how to hire an assistant. So if you guys want to understand, when Kevin's talking about how he builds relationships, he builds it by actually adding value to people with what they need and what's important to them.
And what he's passionate about. So I'm going to throw a question to each one of the panelists here. I'm going to answer the question first. But this question, when I ask it, and Kevin, I'm going to have you go first, I want everyone to answer this question. And so Kim put a question in here. Name some books I should hand out to realtors. I'm an LO. And then Todd, I loved his answer. He said, whatever book you're excited about and you could tell a story around and why. So first of all, don't be giving books out that don't align with what Todd said. You're passionate about it. You can tell a story about it. And you've read it so well that you can teach some of the concepts that are most meaningful to you. Or like, don't give the book out unless it meets that. But I spoke in Denver, Colorado for Cornerstone Home Lending this Tuesday, and I shared the stage with Larry Kendall. I went first. Larry went after me. He is the author of Ninja Selling, which I read many years ago, and it's just a spectacular book because it addresses mindset issues, it addresses just personal philosophies, and then it gets really tactical around real estate. So I mean, to me, that would be a book. First of all, if I was going to buy a bunch of it and give it out to realtors, I would reread it just because I read it, however many years ago. I would reread it now to make sure I feel like it's still as relevant as ever. And I would be looking for some key concepts that I would call out to the realtors I'm giving it to. Kevin, if there was one book you were going to just promote to everybody in this room right now to give to a realtor, their loan officers, what's one book? And then Todd, Deborah, and audience.
One book, one book.
One. I know it's tough. And don't do that whole game where you name three and say one. Just say one.
You're gonna really make me just pick one. I'll go with the most impactful book I've personally read in the last decade, and that's Die with Zero.
Whoa. Did not see that coming. And then quick why and story. And then Todd.
It just completely rewired my brain on viewing life, money. It's this great inflection point of money, time, experiences. It just goes in line with getting the most out of your life and the most out of your money. There's no sense in having a lot of money if you're not going to experience it and help other people with it.
Todd.
I'm going to steal the one that Kevin threw in the chat to us, which is The Road Less Stupid. Keith Cunningham, he's actually really the rich dad of Rich Dad Poor Dad. I had the pleasure of having lunch with he and his wife, with Josh Metal, when we were at a Genius Network event, and I got to hear him go off on a rant on that. But that book is the book that I've actually listened to and read the most over the last, whatever it's been since I met him, 6-7 years. It's an annual, you hear people say, I read these same books every year. That's the one I listen to every year. And he just has so many interesting phrases in there, like, we'd all be better off if we had fewer goals and more standards. He just says things that resonate with me personally. And he's the one, if you've heard me talk about thinking time, he's got just a pivotal story in there that I'm not going to tell because I wouldn't do as great of a job as him. But he talks about really scheduling time to think, and his story about where he came up with that idea and why he does it is one of my favorite stories.
Love that. Deborah.
Man, this is so hard. I'm going to go with The Dream Manager by, I think it's Matthew Kelly. And I took it from a parenting point of view. You could take it from a business point of view. But essentially, I had my kids write out kind of all their dreams. And then each year took on the role of okay, how do I help them achieve these dreams throughout each year and each milestone that they have? So I would say The Dream Manager.
All right, Dave, how about you?
Well, by the way, I want to, Tara, and by the way, Tara, I met you in Denver this Tuesday, right? It's good to see you on this mastermind. And she called out Pivot Year. For me, I kind of threw out the Larry Kendall would be my book of the day. But if it was a new agent, I always start with the Four Agreements. I just think the Four Agreements is such a cornerstone book for me around emotional intelligence. And, when it comes to being a realtor or a mortgage professional, your mindset and your success comes from your ability to not take anything personally, not make any assumptions, be impeccable with your word, not only what you say to others, but what you say to yourself, and do your best, and not just every day, but every minute. And keep in mind that your best changes throughout the day. And when, like my best is first thing in the morning. And if I was to kind of like judge myself around 3 PM based off of my standards for myself in the morning, I would be like beating myself up, like what a loser I am for how I live at 3 PM versus how I rock and roll at 6 to 8. So that's my book, and those are my stories. All right, guys. Good little kickoff of the first quarter. Todd, where do we want to go?
I always laugh because we always say, hey, to our speakers, like, what do you want the headline to be? And Kevin gave me a choice of a few, and I chose the 5 truths to getting to the next level. But I was like, kind of goes back to how Kevin's running his masterminds. It really should be just what the 3 of us have in mind. But Kevin, should we talk about any of these 5 truths?
Yeah, I mean, I actually put them together, and I'll give you a little story behind that too, Todd, which you probably don't know. I've run a same podcast for gosh, almost 8 years now. Like I'm 700 episodes in, and it's a big lift for me to want to continue on some days. And so I decided what I was going to do is if I was going to keep going, I needed to do something to change it for me because I'm not about doing something for the sake of doing it. And so what I do a lot, Todd, as you know, and I walk like a lot. Like I probably walk 5 to 7 miles a day outside. And that's just what I do. It's how I think. It's how I clear my mind. It's just what I do, right? It's how I get sunlight in the morning, all that stuff. And so oftentimes I'm listening to something or thinking about something. And what I found myself doing increasingly over the years is taking my notepad on my iPhone and writing down ideas. So oftentimes they're just things I'm thinking about. And where that relates is in order to keep the podcast fresh for me, I decided instead of always feeling like I need to interview somebody, I'm just going to start sharing those things that I'm thinking about currently. And so if you go back now, probably the last 10 or 20 episodes of my podcast, they're all like only 10 to 12 minutes. For the most part, there might be a couple interviews in there, and it's just different items. This happened to be one of them. These kind of next level truths of agents that are, and this goes for loan officers too. It goes for anybody who wants to go to the next level, whatever that looks like for them. To me, there was 5 things I came up with that I threw out there. Number one is I firmly believe most agents don't have a lead problem, they have a conversion problem. I should say most sales professionals do not have a lead problem, they have a conversion problem. The second truth is your database is your business. So back to what we started talking about, relationships, right? That is your business. Your count number 3 is your calendar is your business plan. I mean, if at least Todd on this call doesn't agree with me, then maybe I'm way off, but I feel like winning by noon like is right in line with that. The fourth next level truth is understanding that discipline beats talent every time. You can be I'm one of the least talented people. I know a lot of people that are not that book smart, not that disciplined, or excuse me, not that talented, but they're extremely disciplined. I don't even necessarily like the word discipline. They use their calendar. They use their calendar to look like discipline. That's actually what it is. They use discipline to build a habit, and then their calendar and their habit actually makes the rest of the world thinks it's all discipline, but we'll call it discipline. Discipline beats talent. And the fifth one is just understanding that most people are addicted to easy. And I know that sounds simple, but when we realize that for ourselves, it's like, why am I doing something this way? It's because I'm addicted to finding the easy way to do it. Subconsciously, that's like how we're designed, is to look for the easier path. And so sometimes we have to figure out where that's hurting us and where that could actually also be helping us. Because some of us will spend too much time working on the shit that doesn't matter. Sorry, stuff. And then other times we're doing things the easy way and it's actually costing us greatly because we're not spending the time to really investigate that. So those are the five levels or the five truths.
I love it. Of course, I'm gonna be focused on number three, the calendar. But the last one, it's funny. I actually just recorded a video this morning on our preferences are our ceiling. I heard Brendan Bouchard say that, and I thought, it's kind of like what you're talking about, right? It's because we all want easy that we don't really push through that ceiling of complexity that we all run into. Number two, I'm going to give a quick plug. You should be listening to Deborah Byrd and I. We've been doing the Win Now podcast, and the first two seasons were all interviews. And then we've done this season just like Kevin has. They're typically about 20-ish minutes, and it's really kind of whatever Deborah and I decide to talk about that day when we get together. And so I think you might like that if you like Deborah and I in our
That's
in our sense
dangerous.
in our sense of humors. Exactly. In our sense of humors, for sure. Arnie threw the list down in the chat if you're watching live, and we'll make sure we have that in the show notes as well to get to Kevin's podcast. Deborah, which one of those resonates with you? What do you want to jump on?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind whenever I read the title and was thinking of next level is how so many will tell me what they want. They reverse engineer it. They know what they should be doing, but they aren't doing. And there's always a reason of what maybe they're getting into a file. This one blew up in underwriting or whatever it may be, but it's like they have the intention and they know what it is they want, but then they don't take those steps to get there. So any advice you have for those people who are like, okay, I want to get there, but I still can't get over myself?
Did you watch Bob Newhart?
No.
I did.
The old
She's
guys
dating herself out.
the old guys in the room did, and so I would take a page out of Bob Newhart's book when he tells one of his patients stop it.
Oh, yes.
To
Just Google
literally
that.
get over
I've
yourself.
seen it. I've seen it.
It's the greatest clip ever, and it's like the best personal development and best like therapy session anyone can ever have, and it took less than a minute. And that's the thing is like sometimes you just got to do it. I have a really close one of my very best friends, and he's one of the most accomplished business people I know as well. He has this thing that he likes to say. He says, "I underthink things. I underthink," meaning he's got a bias towards action. That's not to say he doesn't improve later as he goes, but he has a bias towards action and underthinking rather than because he knows that if he overthinks things, he doesn't actually do anything. He gets stuck. And so therefore he's got a bias towards action, and he just says, underthinking. Just underthink it and go.
I think that's a risk of AI. I think people, when I talk to now, are using AI to overthink things instead of just jumping in and taking action.
Yeah.
Myself included.
I'm re-listening it right now for probably the third, maybe fourth time. I first listened to it in my 20s, and it had a real impact. But I re-listened to it again a couple of years ago because Sarah Blakely kept promoting like how it changed her life. And she actually did a commencement speech a few weeks ago. And really that was the anchor was, how to be a no limit person. And so one of the things I've been thinking about for about 2 days now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on just rethinking what it means to be smart in this age of AI. And just to tell you what got me thinking about it is I always have considered engineers, people that can write code and people that are highly technical as, wow, they're smart, like that's smart. And when you look at AI, it's one of the first things that it can do is vibe coding. Again, engineers still matter, and it's not like AI and vibe coding could completely replace, but it's really making me rethink what it means to be smart. So I would love to hear any thoughts you have on that, whether you've put real consideration into it or whether you just want to riff real quick. But what is smart in 2026 and beyond?
First of all, the very first thought that comes to my mind is a saying that one of my very first mentors taught me. Is a gentleman by the name of Brian Clemmer, who's passed away, and he meant just a ton to me. But one of the things he used to say, and I'm sure this wasn't his original quote, but is, "He who knows why will always employ he who knows how." So understanding why we're doing something is all that matters, right? So to your point, same thing. I look at engineers. I have a cousin who's a robotics engineer, and from like a skills point, that's amazing. And we don't necessarily need nearly the level of engineering expertise to build something these days as we used to, right? And so to me, it goes back to is the highly intelligent person, or the smart, if you will, the person who knows how to do something, or is it the person that knows why we're doing it in the first place? And so I think understanding the why behind things, what the why you're doing something, has a lot to do with it. And just being able to, I guess that's another way too, is saying of like stepping back and being able to see things from more than just your perspective, is to me, that's being smart. That's intelligence, not necessarily how to do something. Because at this point, even without AI, you can learn how to do anything. You can, we could 10 years ago, even we could have gone to YouTube and be like, I want to learn how to do X, right? And we could have figured it out and done it. And so those are the first things that come to my mind.
Todd, what comes to your mind on what does it mean to be smart in this AI age that we're in?
Well, I think it's curious, right? I mean, the one thing that, since I've gone down the rabbit hole of being an exactly what to say guide with Deborah, is the whole idea that curiosity is such an important thing. And I feel like I have in my past showed up with confidence where I didn't necessarily earn the right, or didn't have the knowledge to have the confidence I showed up with. And I've just found that, even going back to what Kevin's talking about, the way I've built better relationships over the past few years is by just asking more questions. And I think in our world as loan officers, I look at this typically in our client conversations where we show up and throw up, and we are the experts. I know all of you listening to this truly are great at what you do. However, you don't pause first just to ask what's going on with the person. And so I think that in this AI world, I think curiosity is really important. And, I think, we talk about this, people of my age, right? Someone with a 5 in front of their age, or maybe a 6 like you, Dave. And even I know, Deborah, maybe you said your kids and you've only got a 4 in front of yours, that a lot of our kids are
Wait,
anti.
Deborah's in her 40s? I thought she was in her 30s.
Mentally, I'm 12. So
Well,
Okay. Now we're talking.
but my daughter's a teacher, and she's in her 20s, and she's one in the anti-AI generation, but she got put on the AI committee at her school. And of course, one of the people that's got money involved, he's really into AI and robotics. And she said she had a half day offsite yesterday. And I loved hearing her, because she said, you know what, Dad, I really approached it with curiosity. I asked these people, the woman who was helping us lead it, who's involved with the school, she's really, really passionate about AI, like really passionate. And so is the guy who's, funding all this stuff. And I just loved it that my daughter said, you know what, Dad, I decided to listen to what you say. And I asked a lot of questions, and I actually walked away with their perspective. Now, she still thinks the things that she thinks about it, but she also understands where they're coming from.
Deborah
Todd,
Byrd,
could I just add on to that real quick? Todd,
there's a special guest, bro.
effectively, that was one of my episodes not too long ago, and it came through. It actually came from a text a friend of mine sent me, and he was explaining to me effectively, like, he realized that that's what I do. And I have a bias towards curiosity. I don't even think it's a skill. It's a behavior for me. So I'm not going to try to take credit for it. But I did that. It was on April 20th, called "It's Not What You Say, It's When You Say It." Because so many times people come to us, especially the people on this call, like, we're leaders on some level, and someone wants an answer, they want advice, and oftentimes we'll just hear their question and start to give them a prescription without actually asking a deeper layer or two or three or four. And I do believe curiosity is the key.
That's the skill, though. How do you stay curious, though, to the level, like 2 is hard for people, 3 and 4 is almost impossible. How do you stay in that curiosity to ask the question after the question?
Well, again, I don't know that I can take any credit for this. What I do, though, is I'm actually interested in it. Like, Todd, like, when I see you, it's why I actually started this podcast, in 2018, was because when I wanted to know what made you successful. And so and here's what I know. People will say the first thing that's on the top of their head, but that's not always really what's happening. And so I just would go, yeah, but tell me about the thing behind that. And I always listen to what people are saying, and oftentimes, especially maybe even more so, what they're not saying. So that way I can ask the next question. And the way I stay interested is I'm actually interested in it.
Well, and you got to be present too, right? You can't be thinking about the next question. You have to be present to hear it out and then form the next question.
Yeah.
So
Deborah
something you
Byrd.
said, Kevin, I've I've added on to it just from teaching exactly what to say. And you said it's not just what you say, but how you say it. I've now added to that that it's not only how you say it, but it's what they hear. Because sometimes what you say is not always what they hear. And then even further, it's then what they remember and can repeat to somebody else. So are you being memorable? Which goes back to kind of Dave, your question about what it means to be smart. And now with AI, it's like we don't lack information anymore. And so to me, a lot of what I've been coaching my clients with and for is how do you then take the information and put your unique point of view on it, not to be unique, but just from your wisdom and from helping people who are just like them, the person, whoever they're talking to. How does that experience now uniquely customize the information to help them make smarter decisions? That is essentially what they're coming to you for, because anyone could go into chat and maybe ask questions of different loan types and which mortgage could be right for me, and they could take it and think that that's like the gospel, but it doesn't have your repeatable history and unique perspective as long as you're willing to be bold and courageous enough to then share it, even at the risk of being wrong and being open to. I've kind of, part of my code, Dave, is like I'm always wrong. I could always be wrong. There's probably something I'm not seeing. And so leaning into that of what am I not seeing? What do I need to unlearn and relearn? Because my story, I've held on to a lot of different things, and then something will expose that maybe that wasn't real. And I'm like, holy cow, I was anchored into this belief, kind of like when we thought the world was flat, and then all of a sudden you're telling me it's round, So just be open to being wrong and have a unique point of view.
Deborah, you said something that made me think of, I swear I did not come on here just to promote my podcast, but I happened to record this recently. There's a story of Jenny Jerome, who was Churchill's mom. She was famously quoted about the statesman William Gladstone and Benjamin Disraeli. She had dinner with these two gentlemen. She said, when I left the dining room after sitting next to Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But when I sat next to Disraeli, I left that dinner feeling like I was the cleverest woman in England. And so you talk about not just what you say, when you say it, how they hear it, and then what they remember. Like I like to think about that quote as a standpoint of how am I making them feel in this conversation as well? Am I making them feel like this is about me or it's about them and in a way that it's going to be impactful for them?
I love that.
Goosebumps.
And and an audience and everyone, whether you watch this on YouTube or you're live, I would push everybody to really think that. I mean, what the transformation that AI is making, not just in the mortgage and real estate industry, but in the world, I think we all need to think about that. And we all can have our own definitions. I mean, I definitely think curiosity is a cornerstone of intelligence, and it's something that you can't take for granted. I mean, young children take it for granted, but most people, the older they get, the more it wanes, and too many people become bitter, not better. And I think the better job we can do of kind of, and by the way I'm thinking about it, because I'm writing this book, The Savage Code, which is an personal operating system to win in life and work. I think a lot of what, like the smartest people, they know themselves the best. Like they really understand themselves. They have a extraordinary sense of self-awareness. No one's perfect when it comes to self-awareness, but I think the smartest people are, by the way, Deborah, they don't believe everything they think. So that, to me, that humility that you have to always have an open mind and like, what am I missing? I'm always like,
Always
I want to
wrong.
look around the corner and see where it's going. Like, to me, that is a sign of intelligence going forward in a big way.
And yet they don't teach that in school
No, it's
at
crazy.
all.
Oh no, it's like,
It's,
I mean, I've already got one mission with Todd, financial literacy, but I swear if I had and I'm gonna try to weave this into First Home IQ, but to teach this stuff. Like when I re-listened to this book by Wayne Dyer, that I mean, I think it's from the 70s. I mean, it's pretty old, but it's still relevant. And by the way, it's not a book. It's only available on Audible. It's only an audio message. But one of his goals and missions and what he calls out is like, we don't teach this in school. We don't teach people how to really have an high emotional IQ.
But I
So
use
Todd,
calculus every day.
what's that?
I use calculus every day. That's what I learned in school. Not just calculus 1, but I
Yeah,
took
right.
calculus 2. All right, so we're in the final quarter. I want to dig in. I want to give all you loan officers an actionable conversation to have with your real estate referral partners. And I feel like this is also something that you can look in the mirror and have with yourself. So you said, Kevin, that number 2 is your database is your business. And I sat in a real estate meeting earlier this week and they talked about going after your database, and everyone in the room had blank stares on their face. These were younger agents. And I'm like, they had no clue what they were talking about. But I think you and Fred have done a great job. Again, you already talked about the book club, but let's switch gears to your real estate clients and when you say your database is your business, what is your recommendation and what are the questions loan officers can be asking themselves and their agents, and of how you guys are running your database as your business?
Well, I think about database as I like to make things simple and then just go deep on those things, right? And so inside of a database, to me, there are 2 types of people. There's people you know, and there's people you don't yet know. So number 1, like that's easy. They're got to be classified. I know them or I don't yet know them. For the people that I don't yet know, it's how do I take them from that to knowing them? And there's a ton of how-tos there, but I want to take them from I don't know them to I do know them. And then for the people I do know, I think the way that was always easiest for me is to think of them in A, B, C, D, which is, and you can define these all for yourself, which is D is I might know their name, they know my name. C is define something that's one step above that. B is another step above that to where maybe I've done a transaction with them in the past, or at least we've talked about it. And then there's the A's, which is these are the people I would pick up the phone if they called me. I would hope that they would pick up the phone. If I saw them in real life, I'd stop and say hi, that type of thing. Once I have these people classified, I can then define how I want to treat them all. And my goal is to constantly be moving people up, because ultimately I do want as many A's as I can get, but I also don't want to treat people who aren't A's like they are. And so if someone's not an A or not a B and they need to move down, that's okay too. So I'm always looking for how I move them. It's really just comes down to how do I treat these people? Not you can't treat them all equally from a business standpoint and from a time standpoint. So what is it I'm going to do? For me, I came up with like, there's things I'm willing to do with my time and there's things I'm willing to do with my money. And that's the way I try to dissect them.
And so
So
for your database for your real estate clients, right? You've got some that are on HomeBot, right? So that's an easy way for you to keep in touch, right? So for you loan officers, that's something that's super easy. You can be doing it with your realtors. Are you guys still doing your postcards? I moved, so they're not coming to me anymore. I used to be on that list, but I literally just got your HomeBot, I think this morning or yesterday.
I literally just pulled away on postcards. However, I'm not pulling away from mailing people.
Mm.
I think of it as by land, sea, and air, which just means I'm in your mailbox, I'm in your inbox, I'm on your social feed, and I'm in your ear and maybe in your face.
I like that. In your face. That's good. Right
Do
here.
you do
We're
any
in your
one to
face.
many events for clients, whether it's educational?
I
Both.
don't, but I think they're amazing. They're just
Okay.
not a high enough priority for me, but I do think that's an amazing way.
So you don't like your clients? I'm just kidding.
I didn't say
I'm
that.
teasing. I'm teasing.
The thing is, I think that is an amazing way, especially if you want to call them like C's and D's and move them into B's and A's.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's a great way to do that for
It's
sure.
probably the analogy would be then better than me asking you about your real estate. We've already covered how you're doing it in your business of your 3,000 agents you have in your network, in your community at EXP, right? The top folks are coming to the mastermind, right? That's 30, 40 people. The next group, which is 300, are getting the book club, right? So you're putting something in their mailbox via land, and then the other ones get to see and hear you because they're part of the next level Facebook community. They're part of the emails, newsletters that you guys send out, and they're listening to the podcast. So I think that's probably a better analogy, knowing that that's your focus, not the real estate piece, for people to understand that. I think you could replicate that in your mortgage business, or coach your real estate agents to replicate that in their real estate business.
Yeah, and we also do like another mastermind that's shorter. It's like 2 hours. There's no charge on it, and it's open to the greater real estate community. We'll do 6 to 8 of those a year. So I guess I might change my answer for Deborah there, because on the real estate side, real estate agent side, I do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to note, guys, we're talking to someone who is not only a realtor and a practitioner, and he shared some of the things he does with his real estate customers, but he's a community builder, and he's prioritizing building that community of realtors. And he just answered the question, like that's his main priority right now, and he's doing a lot of one-to-many things. Hey, before we run out of time, I do want to make sure we hit your number one, out of your top 5 things, which, Todd, you should make a little clip, where like Kevin Kauffman's 5 truths to get to the next level. And I would push everybody, while we didn't spend a tremendous amount of time just drilling down on each one of them, I would really push you post this call to, do a little scoring. Where do you rate on, when he says your database is your business, what do you think the standards are, and how well are you executing on that? When he said your calendar is your business plan, look at your calendar. Do you have important things built out for the year? When he said discipline beats talent every time, are you living up to that? I know I'm not. Like, I know personally, I kind of like, okay, there's a few things I'm not doing. I should be walking more. I'm always best when I'm out on my feet walking as the sun rises. For a couple of years, I literally rarely missed that. And lately I'm averaging about 3 to 4 days a week. I got to get that back to 5. But Kevin, let's do the whole conversion. You said most realtors and loan officers don't have a lead problem, but they have a conversion problem. Put a little more description around that.
What I mean by that is, okay, think about the way I talked about my database. There's people I know and people I don't know. That's the simplest form I think of. And so part of it depends on how you define a lead. Like a lead can be different things to different people. I think what most people define leads as is people that are just further down the sales funnel and they're ready to go. And to me, a lead is, I've got your name, number, and I know that you're interested on some level, not that you're ready to go today.
Or you could qualify, you may not, it might speed to need, like they may not even realize that they could move up, but
Yes.
You as an agent know they could move up, and you're going to educate them. They may be renting and could buy, but they don't know it,
Yeah. And if you're curious enough to ask them questions, you'll find that out, right? And so it's just about, okay, I already have this pile of names and numbers somewhere. Hopefully they're in a database, they're in a CRM somewhere, hopefully. If not, get them in there. And then it's about going deeper, asking questions that you need to ask to figure out, is this one a viable, or when would they be a viable client, right? And so that's what I mean is, I feel like most people skim the surface of leads, whatever that is, and so they think I need more. And the reality is the deeper you go, the more transactions you pull. And when I say deeper, that's a combination of like, you literally just call them more, or you reach out to them more. It doesn't have to, I guess, doesn't just have to be a call, although that should be a big part of it. It means you have a conversation and you ask more than one question, and you don't just go away at the first objection. You actually learn how to get comfortable in handling objections and go 2, 3, 4, 5 questions deep. So that way you don't waste your time on that phone call, is one way to look at it. So there's deeper from the sense of like, I'm actually just calling these people or attempting these people a ridiculous amount of times. I love the way Alex Hormozy talks about this. He says like, just take so much action that it would be, it basically wouldn't make sense that you didn't have success. And the thing is, the magic there is, it doesn't actually need to be on a greater number of people. It needs to be done a greater number of times on the people that you do have. I think of like a friend of mine and Todd's, he's my neighbor at work, Joe Polish, talked about, he's like, I've read 1,000 books. I probably would have been better off if I just read the 10 best over and over and over again. And so granted, we need more than 10 clients, but we don't need 10,000 of them. And so if I just had my best 150, another mutual friend of mine and Todd's, Dean Jackson, teaches this whole thing on, hey, if you've got, he calls it return on relationship. If you've got 150 clients that you actually have relationships with, that's good for 30 transactions a year. That's his gold standard on what he calls return on relationships. And if you just took those 150 and treated them the right way and you went deep enough on that 150, now you've got 30 transactions a year. If that's not enough to hit your goals, cool. You just need more. If it's more than enough, you might only need 125 people. But the point is, we actually all have the leads. The problem we have is this conversion problem where we just get impatient and we want people to, it's like we expect people to, fill out an application on our website, or they inquired on a listing on our website, and we just expect them to go, hey man, I'm ready to buy. Here's all my documents. I'm pre-qualified. Let's make a full price offer and let's go. Well, the world doesn't work that way. Like, we actually have to spend time getting them back on the phone, getting them engaged, helping them get through their objections, asking the questions we need, sometimes overcoming their objections, and then leading them appropriately based on what their goals really are.
I want to push everybody to do something to go a little deeper. And I took this away and I actually added to my personal code. Sean Herrero, I spoke at his workshop a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things he said over and over and over, I wonder if, like, by the way, which is a demonstration of curiosity. And then he was putting it into AI. And so for all you mortgage coaches, you should know, for all the customers that you care about, what their goals are. Like, is their goal to move up, move down, help their kids achieve homeownership? Like, most people, or is their goal to be in the same house that they're in for the next 30 years and do some home repairs? But if you don't know the family's goals, and then do you know their equity position? And if you know their goals and you know their equity position, you can start really coming up with some ideas to help them accelerate growing wealth with real estate, achieving their goals, and converting, all the needs in your database into opportunities. And I don't think real estate agents are even thinking about this. And so, Todd, you said, hey, I want to give everybody some tactical thoughts that you could pull from Kevin, and you can say, hey, I had this meeting with Kevin Kauffman. By the way, you can all say that you mastermind today with Kevin Kauffman, and you got some ideas from it. And anyways, speed to need, create opportunities, don't wait for opportunities, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah. You also just prompted something for me. I've got a friend and mentor by the name of Adam Robinson, and he taught me this little trick because he's a very curious individual. You said those words, I wonder if. Go into Google and type the words, I wonder if, right? I wonder if people, and whatever, the thing about, here's one of the beautiful things about Google is it's a great experiment on people. Like, those suggested prompts that you finish there, those are the most typed things. Like that, you're able to actually query the world right now. And so that's an amazing thing to do. Like, I wonder if realtors are fill in the blank. And if you want to know what people are thinking about and then how you could go provide a lot of value there. So anyways, I know that was a little bit off topic, but you really sparked that with me with the I wonder if comment there, Dave.
No, I love that, brother.
I think the more off topic we go and we all talk, the better the results are for those listening. That's just my opinion, because I feel like anytime we get four bright minds like us, along with the folks that are asking questions and comments, it's going to be a good day.
Yeah, I just shared a little note that I copied out of my personal code that I added last week. Thank you, Sean Hero, for inspiring it. But cool. Well, I know we've only got a couple minutes left, Todd, and I'll let you close it out, brother.
Literally, this hour has flown by. So, let's get closing thoughts from everyone. Let's start with you, Kevin.
I mean, my closing thoughts are understanding the audience here today, mostly being in loan officers, you and I are in the same business. I genuinely am servicing real estate agents. I'm building relationships with real estate agents as well. I'm also running my sales on the side. However, my major focus work-wise is real estate agents. And I'm just always thinking about how I can add value to other agents, how I can connect people. I often go, I mean, Dave and Todd would both tell you that I often just we all do this to each other. Like we randomly like, dude, I just heard this podcast. You would love this. Now the reason I can do that is because I know what they're interested in. I've spent enough time talking to them and with them to know that. I do the same thing with real estate agents. Or if a loan officer comes to me or a real estate agent comes to me and they're like, this is where they're at in their business, that this thing they're trying to figure out, they want to know how to run, I don't know, I'm making it up, showing assistant model. I go, great, you got to talk to my friend Chris Bowers. Let me make a connection for you. And I will literally send a group text and go, hey, Chris, this is my buddy Todd. He's blah, blah, blah. Would you mind spending 20 minutes with him, telling him about your showing assistant model? And then boom, I put people together. I don't necessarily get anything for that, but what I've done is I've helped both people in that scenario. And by the way, Chris is willing to do that because I'm only friends with people that are willing to do stuff like that. I'm not friends with assholes. I filter those people out. And so I just look for people that also want to add value because the people know that if they add value, they're going to receive value too. It's literally just win-win. So I just want to say, if you're just constantly thinking about how you help your agents, whether or not you get that direct deal back or not, you can't think about that. Whether I recruit that agent that I'm talking to today directly or not, I don't think about that. I just genuinely think about how can I help this person. And I believe if I do that enough, I win.
Okay,
Love
I'm
it.
going to put a social media action to what you just said, Kevin. And a lot of times I have clients that will ask, like, how do I get more views or how do I get more followers? And so I want you to flip it and let's focus on what we can control. And I want you to go uniquely see other people online where you make it a standard that you give out at least, 20 likes on other key accounts, catching people doing good or doing things right and leaving 20 different genuine, like truly genuine comments on other people's accounts per day. Because you can control what you do. You can't control necessarily who sees you, but maybe instead of the focus being on how many views and likes am I getting, I'm just going to focus on how many I can give.
Love it.
I would just push everybody to re-listen to this, pull out pearls of wisdom, and then self-assess. Where are you at on achieving that? And then usually when you're not achieving what you want or you are achieving what you want, it's because of something you believe, it's a principle that you have, it's a personal philosophy that you have, and it's either fueling your success or you might even have it, but you're not living it. And you're letting yourself down. So do some self-assessment and do some journaling on your personal code.
I love that. Yeah, the easiest way to do that is to do what Kevin talked about. Get out there and walk, right? That's one of the things that I've really enjoyed the most the past couple of years is doing what Kevin does, is getting out and walk. And then I walk with my phone. And I think the thing that Kevin said is the thing that most of us aren't doing is he just actually is thinking while he's walking and not always listening to things. And then when he's listening to things or thinking, he's taking notes. And so it's one of the things I've taken from Dave and his code is as I'm now aware, I actually have in my Apple Notes, I literally write code and then what the thought is after it. So I've already got dozens of notes that are my code that I'm slowly building. And I know that I'm going to get off of this conversation with Kevin and y'all, and I'm going to be talking about some piece of your calendar is your business plan. Bottom line is this, is I think you have an opportunity here to take action on something that you heard in Kevin's 5 truths today. And I think that there's an opportunity for you first to look in the mirror and think about it for yourself and where you can improve. And then also to have these conversations with your agents. We would love it if you would share this episode with them. Super grateful you're all here. And Kevin, you almost look like you have something else to say, or are you just thinking there at the end?
No, I'm just thinking that was good.
That was good. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, Deborah, Dave, all of you who are listening live and recorded. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for being part of the Loan Officer Mastermind. We will see you next week.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.